Tropical FM TV. Music for your soul.
Everybody, and welcome to Exploring and Understanding the Universe. As you know, I'm your host, Sammy Fowler, and with me, if you're in the chat room or secretly watching, you'll know that I have my co-presenter, Jeff Burt, in the chat room with me. So, of course, this evening, my co-host and myself decided that we would pull a show together for somebody who is very, very special. Now, a man who, in fact, changed the views of science and, in fact, helped the public and, of course, children, with teaching them all about science. Now, of course, you probably well know of who I'm talking about, so I don't need to give you any clues. But since tonight's show is going to be fully dedicated to Stephen Hawking himself, I won't be talking as much during tonight's show. Sorry, guys. But I believe that, well, what I'm going to be talking about or showing you will, in fact, be explaining itself in the video. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an insight before we check out the music, or not the music, the brain. I'm talking about the videos that we're talking about. So before we do that, because it's quite, how can I put it, longish, so I'm going to give you a little bit of detail first. So for those who don't know much about Stephen Hawking's background, here's a little bit of information. So of course he was born on January the 8th, 1942 in a place called Oxford in England. Both of his parents had, in fact, studied at Oxford. When he was 9, Stephen got very poor grades in school and just managed to be an average student. Now, he was always interested in how stuff works. He took clocks and radios apart, pretty much the usual, and had trouble putting them back together. But his nickname was, of course, Einstein. Now, Stephen was always interested in maths and science. In fact, he even won a scholarship to study physics at Oxford. Of course, then he decided that he wanted to do cosmology at Cambridge. So just to give you a little bit of an insight, I'm now going to help you to understand a little bit more. Now, some videos you may find a little bit too much, so get a tissue ready if you're sensitive. That's all I'm going to say. But let's take a look at the life he actually had with these videos. I'm going to start off with the mini bio with Stephen Hawking, so check this one out.
Persistent in his pursuit of knowledge, Stephen Hawking has unlocked new pathways of discovery and inspired people around the world.
Stephen William Hawking was born in Oxford, England on the 300th anniversary of the death of Galileo on January 8, 1942. At 17 years old, he entered Oxford University.
Stephen Hawking has admitted in many cases that he was not the most ambitious student. One day he calculated that he spent about maybe an hour a day on schoolwork.
In 1962, Hawking moved to Cambridge University for a PhD in cosmology, and 1 year later was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease.
ALS is a progressive motor neuron disease, so over time, the victim loses functionality of muscles. And over the past decades, Stephen Hawking has gradually lost the use of most of his muscles, but his mind remains quite keen.
I think that once he was hit with this earth-shattering diagnosis, he actually sought a refuge in doing physics. And if anything, it helped him become one of the world's great scientists.
Although his diagnosis only gave him 2.5 years to live, Hawking married in 1965 and stunned the science world in 1974 with his PhD on black holes.
Stephen taught us how to define a black hole. He then made a brilliant discovery that black holes can radiate, Hawking radiation. That then showed the whole world the connection between black hole physics and thermodynamics. And that connection has been a central theme in theoretical physics ever since.
He became the Sherman Fairchild Distinguished Scholar at Caltech in 1974. And 5 years later, Hawking was named Cambridge University's Lucasian Professor of Mathematics, an honor bestowed on only 14 people since 1663.
Stephen Hawking is a theoretical physicist of a very specific kind. He studies cosmology, particle physics, gravity. That's trying to understand the very basic laws of physics as well as where the universe itself came from.
Hawking sees things that other people didn't see, time and again. He just thinks more deeply than most of the rest of us. And those insights have had big consequences.
Even though Hawking deteriorated to the point that he needed a computerized speech synthesizer to speak, he wrote A Brief History of Time in 1988, selling more than 10 million copies.
Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History of Time, which was a bestseller for weeks and weeks, was about some of the most profound questions that face humanity. It's really about where we come from and where we're headed, from a physicist's point of view.
After expanding upon his work with several more books, Hawking increased his popularity by guest starring in TV shows like The Simpsons, Star Trek: The Next Generation, and The Big Bang Theory.
I think Hawking is absolutely the most popular physicist, probably since Einstein. There are plenty of other physicists who are working very deeply at nature's secrets, but Hawking has celebrity status that very few scientists reach.
Hawking received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2009. Although he retired from teaching that same year, Stephen Hawking continues to be hailed as one of the greatest scientific minds of all time.
Stephen Hawking as a scientist has had a tremendous impact on our understanding of the universe and the laws of nature. At the same time, as a human being, he has been an inspiration to the world, to his colleagues, and to people with disabilities everywhere.
So I've got quite a lot of people who are listening in, and I just want to mention a few of them and just give them a quick shout out before I continue. Frankie, great to have you with us. Nigel Eyre, Donovan Woodens, Jane Dawkins, Jasmine Parsons. Thank you for all locking in. If you guys want to give a shout out or something like that, feel free. If you want to request something for next week, by all means, you know what to do. So yeah, I mean, just taking a look at that miniature bio on Stephen Hawking himself, it kind of makes you think, well, there's a lot going on here, isn't there? So I've decided, okay, well, because this show is going to be dedicated around him, his family, and what his daughter actually did in terms of working with him. I think it's amazing. So I'm going to show you the next video, which is going to be based on his family, Lucy, and this one's called My Father, Stephen Hawking. Check this one out.
And this is my father, Stephen Hawking, and here's a very nice photograph of him. He's a very brilliant man. He's a theoretical physicist, and that means that he looks for ways to understand the universe around us using the laws of physics. As I said, he's a very brilliant man, and he's the Lucasian Professor of Mathematics at Cambridge University, so that's a very long way to say it's the same job that the great scientist Isaac Newton once held. And he's won many awards and been given many honorary degrees, and so you would think that this would have been obvious right from the beginning. Well, this is the part of the talk where we do some time travel. We're going to go back and take a look. So here he is. This is my father as a small boy with his two sisters. And when my father was a young boy and he was at school, his teachers didn't think that much of him. This is a line from one of his school reports. This boy will never amount to anything. But, however, his classmates must have noticed something about him, because they nicknamed him Einstein. And he did grow on to become a scholar, and this just shows that kids are so much cleverer than adults, because he became a scholar and he went to Oxford University and he left with a first in honours in physics. And he came to Cambridge to begin his research. Now, around this time, he also found out that he was suffering from a disease. And it's a disease called ALS. And what it does is it slowly takes away your ability to move your muscles. And in later years, it's also taken away his natural speaking voice. And so at the end of the talk, when you hear him talking to you, it will sound like a computer is speaking to you. But it isn't. It's a real man who's using a computer to give himself back the voice that his disease has taken away from him. But fortunately, some good things also happened to my father at this time. He met my mother, and he got engaged, and he got married, and he started work on his thesis. And his thesis was called Properties of Expanding Universes. And as part of his thesis, he managed to prove that the universe must have had a definite beginning. So that's not bad for a bit of postgraduate work, actually. And now, a few years on, and here we are, this is 1970 in Cambridge, and that baby is me. And my parents called me Lucy because the name Lucy comes from the Latin word for light. And light is one of the major studies of astrophysicists, like my father. And so it's a very good name for the daughter of a physicist. And the reason I'm showing you this photo from 1970 was an important year for my father. He had a eureka moment, and he worked out a very elegant mathematical proof of what happens when two black holes collide. He worked out that when two black holes collide, they join to form a larger black hole, but that they can't split to form two black holes. So as you can tell, I was a very inspirational, thought-provoking baby there. Now here we are, this is a few years later, and we have moved to Caltech. We're now living in California, in Pasadena, and Caltech is a great center for scientists on the west coast of America. And this is 1974, which is another very important year for my father, because he's working on his realizations about what happens when a star implodes to form a black hole. So we saw the supernova, the great explosion at the end of a star's life a few minutes ago. And what happens if it was a big enough star, then it throws the outer layers off, and the inner core can collapse on itself to form a black hole. And that's what my father's working on at this point. Now, after this, we go back to England, and my father takes up his professorship at Cambridge. And many, many, many things happen over the intervening years. I grow up, become a teenager. My school reports were really not so great either. And my father also has a very, very busy time. He writes his best-selling work, A Brief History of Time. Now, this is a book that has sold all over the world, and yet some people claim that not so many people have actually managed to finish it. So that's one of the reasons why we set to work on our children's books. We set to work to try and add some extra explanation. Now, at that time, my father also had some fun things going on in his life. He went on The Simpsons. He really loved being on The Simpsons. He thought that was fabulous. And he really liked the way they gave him helicopter blades for his wheelchair. But he did say that he's really glad that in real life he's not bright yellow. He also did this. He was on Star Trek. He was just visiting the Paramount Studios one day because he was working at Caltech, and they asked him if he'd like a part. And so here he is on the Enterprise with the two greatest scientists of all time, to my mind, Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. And a few more adventures. Here he is floating in zero gravity. And this is a really lovely picture, because if you look at the size of his smile, and you think this is a man whose mind has been free to travel across the whole universe, but his body has been confined to a wheelchair for decades by this point. And here he is, he's free and he's floating.
Wow. Guys, I really appreciate you're really bringing in the numbers. I just want to give a quick shout out to a few of you, because I can't really spend too much time. Matt Island, Jeff Burke, co-presenter. Jamie Smith, new viewer, thank you for joining. We've got Rachel Hindle, she's also a new viewer. Robert Franz, new viewer, thank you all for joining in. If you guys want to continue spreading the word, please share it out. This show really needs it, please. Yeah, so his daughter, crazy, right? I didn't even know about that. That was absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to throw you over another video that's going to shock you from, I don't know, out of this world. This next video is, in fact, based on his wife and his children. This is, in fact, everything that you pretty much need to know about Stephen Hawking's family. You might need tissue for this one. Hint. Enjoy this one.
Despite the painstaking process of typing each word, Professor Hawking has written several books, including a series for kids that explains how the universe works. And now he and his daughter are big names in the under 12 crowd.
My own childhood was, to an extent, quite magical. We lived in this funny little house with playing in the churchyard. You could go down to the river. My father worked on the stars. And so I had this whole element of fabulous fantasy in my real childhood, and that's one of the things I tried to carry across to the book.
Lucy's always leaned more towards the creative side, but really, her dabbling in science started very early.
In 1970, just after I was born, my father actually had his eureka moment, and he says that he was up very late after the birth of his daughter, so that would be me, and it came to him, this moment of inspiration. He had a eureka moment about what happens when two black holes collide, and he worked out a very, very elegant mathematical proof in which he proved that when two black holes collide, they can join to form a larger black hole, but that they cannot divide. One black hole cannot divide to become two. And so this happened just after my birth, so I like to think I was a rather inspirational baby.
Her father still works on the stars, and convincing him to put the biggest questions in the universe into kid-friendly writing was easy, as Professor Hawking told us himself.
We wanted to write for children because they are the future.
The search for life in the solar system and beyond, that's actually the theme of George's Cosmic Treasure Hunt, which is our latest book. And it's one of the questions that kids really do ask. It's one of the most common questions is there anyone else out there? And so we wanted to look at this question and talk about it, and talk about the possibility of life on other worlds, but also the possibility of taking human life out to other worlds.
He's a leading expert on the universe, so we asked, does Stephen Hawking think there's life out there?
We don't know if there is alien life. But if life developed on Earth, it must be possible for life to have developed elsewhere. Given that the universe is infinite, we would expect alien life to exist somewhere, but it might be a very long way from us.
These books also, they are based on my father's career in science, and they're based on a great and an amazing career that spanned over 40 years. And the work that he would like to be remembered for is his work on black holes and the origins of the universe, and so that's where we're taking everyone on the cosmic journey.
Another adventure they both experienced recently was the thrill of weightlessness in NASA's zero-gravity flight.
It's like the first time as a child you go on a roller coaster. It's that same sensation of, oh my God, this is amazing. It's really cool. I loved it. And we did about 15 parabolas, and at the end, we'd all turned into kids, basically. And at the end, they went, oh, I'm afraid this is your last parabola. And we're like, oh no, we wouldn't have another go. Could we do it again? I mean, you just thought, by the time we got to Spain, we were all about age 3, I think. So excited, it was so cool.
The level of cool was more profound for her father. After 40 years in a wheelchair, Stephen Hawking was floating.
We've had an extraordinary time. He's an amazing man. If you think about what he's achieved in science, and then separate from what he's achieved by the way he's dealt with his disability, both those things are incredible. But when you actually put them together in one person, that's, I think, what makes him so extraordinary and unique.
For Professor Hawking, though, there's an added element that makes it extraordinary.
I think it is all of those things. I am very pleased to have made a contribution to our understanding of the universe, despite my physical difficulties. But it would have been an empty triumph without the love and support of my family.
Wow, okay. So the next video that we're going to be checking out is his speech. Now remember, like I was saying, this one's a little bit long, so just brace yourselves for this one. I think it's about 11 or 12 minutes. I'm not sure. But this one is in fact his speech. This was from 1983 when they first documented the information about him, to in fact the latest speech that he gave before he passed. So pretty much his whole life expanded into one video of 11 or 12 minutes. So check this one out.
physicist Stephen Hawking has died at age 76. Hawking's family released a statement early Monday morning confirming that Stephen had passed away at his home in Cambridge. In a statement, his children said, "We are deeply saddened that our beloved father passed away today." When he was diagnosed with ALS at age 21, Hawking was given only 2 years to survive. He defied the odds, however, and went on to make some of the most revolutionary discoveries in scientific history. The famed academic was known for his work with black holes and relativity. He was also the first person to propose a theory of cosmology by combining the general theory of relativity with quantum mechanics. Here's what you need to know about Stephen Hawking's family. 1. He is survived by his 3 children. Hawking is survived by his 3 children, his son, Robert, born May 1967, his daughter, Lucy, born 1970, and his 3rd child, Timothy, born 1979. According to The Guardian, Hawking's children said of their father after his passing, "He was a great scientist and an extraordinary man whose work and legacy will live on for many years. His courage and persistence with his brilliance and humor inspired people across the world." They added on, he once said, "It would not be much of a universe if it wasn't home to the people you love." Robert, the eldest son, is a British software engineer for Microsoft, according to article bio. And although he is British, he is believed to live in Seattle with his wife and 2 children. Timothy, meanwhile, studied Spanish at Exeter University. Newsweek reports that Timothy discussed his father's condition in a rare interview in 2015. The outlet reports him as saying, "My dad was able to speak with his own, natural voice for those first years, but it was incredibly difficult to understand what he was saying, particularly for me at such a young age. As a 3-year-old, I had no understanding of what he was saying. I didn't really have any communication with him for the first 5 years of my life." 2. His daughter Lucy is a prolific writer and educator. Hawking's daughter Lucy, who is now 47, is a successful journalist, novelist, educator, and philanthropist. At the University of Oxford, Lucy spent her time studying French and Russian. After graduating, she went on to study international journalism at City, University of London. Lucy has written for New York Magazine, The Daily Mail, The Telegraph, The Times and The Guardian. There is little she doesn't do. Growing up, Lucy helped take care of her father. She published her first novel, Jaded, in 2004, which was followed by Run for Your Life in 2005. Many of her books have focused on teaching children to engage with science. In the world of philanthropy, Lucy is the vice president of the National Star College, along with a trustee of the Autism Research Fund. In an interview on The Today Show, Lucy was asked what it was like growing up as the daughter of the world's most famous physicist. She said, "The fame didn't arrive until the publication of A Brief History of Time, by which time I was in my late teens. What was most striking was the high level of attention his electric wheelchair attracted. I suppose that in the 1970s, it was quite unusual to see a disabled person drive himself around in a wheelchair. People really did stop and stare. One big contribution my father has made is to show that having a disability does not bar you from leading a full and eventful life." His recent zero-gravity flight and plans to go into space show that the sky is literally the limit as far as he is concerned. 3. He has 2 younger sisters and an adopted brother. Stephen Hawking was born on January 8, 1942, in Oxford, Oxfordshire. His father, Frank Hawking, and his mother Isabel Hawking both graduated from the University of Oxford. They met at a medical research institute at the beginning of World War II. Isabel was working as a secretary, while Frank was working as a medical researcher. In 1950, Stephen's father became the head of parasitology at the National Institute of Research, and the entire family moved to St. Albans, Hertfordshire. Hawking has 2 younger sisters, Philippa and Mary, and an adopted brother, Edward. Mary was born just 18 months after Stephen. Hawking was married to Jane Wilde from 1965 to 1995. Wilde was a friend of his sister, and they met about 1 month before Hawking was diagnosed with motor neuron disease at age 21. The pair became engaged in 1964 and were married on July 14, 1965. In his book My Brief History, Hawking writes, "I found to my surprise I was enjoying life. What made the difference was that I got engaged to a girl called Jane Wilde, whom I'd met about the time I was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. This gave me something to live for." In 2015, Jane opened up about her 26-year marriage to Hawking. "When Stephen was first diagnosed, we weren't actually going out together, but I was already falling in love with him," she told The Telegraph. "He had beautiful eyes and this amazing sense of humor, so we were always laughing. Also, I was young and had lots of energy and optimism, and that did make a difference. But most importantly, I loved Stephen and wanted to do my best for him. So I thought that I could easily devote 2 years of my life to help somebody I loved, someone who had so much potential, achieve his ambitions." Jane admits that fame became overwhelming over the years, not only for her, but for Stephen's entire family. She tells The Telegraph that after Stephen published A Brief History of Time, matters became even worse. "It drew all sorts of people into our circle and really made our home life intolerable." Although he went on to marry nurse Elaine Mason, Jane and Stephen remain good friends. "Our marriage was a great success. Stephen achieved what he wanted to achieve. We kept going for a very long time, and we had 3 wonderful children together. I feel a great deal of admiration and a lot of love for him too. It's not the same kind of passionate love as before, but yes, I do still love him." Jane's book, Traveling to Infinity, My Life with Stephen, was the inspiration for the film The Theory of Everything. 5. His second wife was one of his nurses. In the late 1980s, Hawking grew close to one of his nurses, Elaine Mason. In February 1990, he left his family to be with Mason. He and Jane officially divorced in the spring of 1995, and he married Mason the following September. Jane had met an organist in the mid-1980s named Jonathan Hellier Jones, who she went on to marry 1 year after Stephen wed Elaine. In My Brief History, Hawking writes, "I started to become more and more unhappy about the increasingly close relationship between Jane and Jonathan. In the end, I could stand this situation no longer, and in 1990 I moved out to a flat with one of my nurses, Elaine Mason. Elaine and I got married in 1995. 9 months later Jane married Jonathan Jones. As to the question of whether or not Stephen believes he led a good life, he writes, "When I was 21 and contracted motor neuron..."
Okay, so of course that was just looking at his life in general. Of course, we're going to be moving on to NASA because, in fact, NASA did a very lovely, honorable legacy for himself. Yeah, I mean, let's check this one out. I think this one's incredible.
Hawking radiation also got him noticed beyond the narrow world of physics. In the late 1970s, black holes were sexy. People latched onto Hawking as the guru who could explain the mysteries of the universe. He began appearing in newspapers and on television. His physical appearance and the way he talked about big ideas in a witty and accessible way made him unforgettable, even though he had to use a student to interpret his failing speech.
You wouldn't see anything special if you passed inside the black hole. But once you pass a certain critical point, you'd never be able to get out again, no matter how much rocket power you used.
Stephen was very lucky in being the right person in the right place at the right time. Science, in some way, has become the new religion, that people are looking for ultimate truths. They'd lost God, and they were looking for something to replace God, and they hit on cosmology and black holes in the universe, and then they found a person who could represent the entire community of cosmology and astrophysics and so on to them.
We all came out of a singularity. The Big Bang singularity at the beginning of the universe. So it wouldn't be that unnatural if we all ended up in another singularity. You could say dust to dust and ashes to ashes and singularity to singularity.
Now, Professor Hawking, in the very last paragraph of your book, you say that if we discover a complete theory of the universe, then it should in time be understandable in broad principle to everyone and not just to a few scientists. And when that happens, all of us will be able to start discussing the why rather than the how. And I quote, "If we find the answer to that, it would be the ultimate triumph of human reason, for then we would know the mind of God." Do you think that God can intervene in the universe as he wants, or is God too bound by the laws of science?
The question of whether God is bound by the laws of science is a bit like the question, can God make a stone that is so heavy that he cannot lift it? I don't think it is very useful to speculate on what God might or might not be able to do. Rather, we should examine what he actually does with the universe we live in. All our observations suggest that it operates according to well-defined laws. These laws may have been ordained by God, but it seems that he does not intervene in the universe to break the laws, at least not once he had set the universe going.
To introduce to you tonight Professor Stephen Hawking, who will speak to us about imagination and change, science in the next millennium. Professor Hawking.
Can you hear me? My theme tonight is science in the new millennium. The popular picture of science in the future is shown on television every night in science fiction series like Star Trek. They've persuaded me to take part, not that it was difficult. Because of the red alert, I never collected my winnings. I approached Paramount Studios, but they didn't know the exchange rate. The Star Trek appearance was great fun, but I show it to make a serious point. Nearly all the visions of the future that we have been shown, from H.G. Wells onwards, have been essentially static. They show a society that is in most cases far in advance of ours, in science, in technology, and in political organization. The last might not be difficult.
So please join me in welcoming Stephen Hawking.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around and desert you, never gonna make you cry, never gonna say goodbye, never gonna tell a lie and hurt you.
It is a great pleasure to be here today to open this new center. We spend a great deal of time studying history, which, let's face it, is mostly the history of stupidity. So it is a welcome change that people are studying instead the future of intelligence. Intelligence is central to what it means to be human. Everything that our civilization has achieved is a product of human intelligence, from learning to master fire, to learning to grow food, to understanding the cosmos. I believe there is no deep difference between what can be achieved by a biological brain and what can be achieved by a Can you hear me? I am delighted and honored to receive a special prize in fundamental physics. I would like to thank Yuri Milner for founding these prizes, to recognize outstanding work that may not qualify for the Nobel Prize, because it is very difficult or impossible to confirm experimentally. In my case, although almost every theoretical physicist agrees with my prediction that a black hole should glow like a hot body, it would be very difficult to verify experimentally. The temperature of a macroscopic black hole is so low. I thought my discovery would never be confirmed or recognized. However, it could be claimed that it has already been indirectly confirmed by observations of the microwave background. I have not allowed my disability to stop me doing most things. My motto is there are no boundaries. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. What an inspirational man. I mean, it's beyond words. Everybody's saying he's done so much. And yeah, quite frankly, you are right. He has done so much. He's empowered a lot of changes, things that, you know, scientists thought of one thing. He's gone out and proved that these things are actually real. I think he actually, he done a little bit on Stephen Hawking radiation, because he was in fact working on the black hole factor, which I know most of you are kind of killing me to do again, which I'm going to be doing again for you guys. But just tonight alone, I just wanted to put this show together, just a little something special, just to say thank you, you know. So we're going to jump over to our next video, and this is the one that NASA, I was going to say the last one, but I got it mixed up. So this one is the NASA video that they honored with Stephen Hawking. So check this one out.
I would like to introduce and welcome Professor Hawking and Lucy. Thank you all so much.
Can you hear me? Why should we go into space? What is the justification for spending all that effort and money on getting a few lumps of moon rock? Aren't there better causes here on Earth? We thought space was worth a big effort in the 60s. In 1962, President Kennedy permitted the U.S. to landing a man on the moon by the end of the decade. This was achieved just in time by the Apollo 11 mission in 1969. The space race helped to create a fascination with science and led to great advances in technology, including the first large-scale integrated circuits, which are the basis of all modern computers. A new interest in space would also increase the public standing of science generally. The low esteem in which science and scientists are held is having serious consequences. We live in a society that is increasingly governed by science and technology, yet fewer and fewer young people want to go into science.
Professor Stephen Hawking is arguably our greatest living cosmologist. Struck down in his 20s by a progressive motor neuron disease, he is entirely paralyzed and can only communicate using a speech synthesizer. But when Professor Hawking speaks, NASA listens.
I fear for our future. Our planet, Earth, is threatened with an ever-expanding population and only finite resources. We need a plan B. If our species is to survive the next 100 years, let alone 1,000, it is imperative we voyage out into the blackness of space to colonize new worlds across the cosmos. The ISS is pioneering space exploration. Without this knowledge, travel into deep space is impossible. Within 50 years, I have no doubt, there will be settlements on the moon, and by the end of the century, I truly hope, humans will be living on Mars. I think the work on the ISS will take a new generation of human space explorers out into our solar system and beyond. I would like to congratulate the New Horizons team and NASA on their pioneering, decade-long mission to explore the Pluto system and the Kuiper Belt. Billions of miles from Earth, This little robotic spacecraft will show us the first glimpse of mysterious Pluto, the distant icy world on the very edge of our solar system. It is 50 years since the first successful mission to Mars, Mariner 4, sent back 21 images of the red planet. Now the solar system will be further opened up to us, revealing the secrets of distant Pluto. The revelations of New Horizons may help us to understand better how our solar system was formed. We explore because we are human, and we want to know. I hope that Pluto will help us on that journey. I will be watching closely, and I hope you will too.
So just before we go to the next video, I just wanted to say a few shout outs to people, because there's a lot of people who are silently watching and they're saying, hey, what about me, you know? I haven't had a shout out. So Stuart, Simon, Shane, Reese, good to have you locked in. Liam, Phil, Paula, GTR lady, nice to have you locked in. Josh, Barry, I don't know. Who else have we got? We got Clint, we got my mother. Jason, Chantel, Kushdeep, Ricky, Julie, Liam again, and Matthew. So it's great to have you all locked in with us. So thank you so much. Spread the word, because really need it. So I decided that, well, Jeff put something together on the group page on Facebook, and I don't know if all of you managed to see this, but I decided, okay, you know what? For those who are not on Facebook, I know there's quite a lot of Twitter gurus out there, this next video is for you guys, and this one is from NASA directly. So if you wanted to send your name to the sun, this is what you need to do, so watch this video.
A chance to send your name to the sun. Testing systems for our Orion spacecraft. And sizing up Earth from space. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA.
Want to join NASA on a historic mission of discovery?
We're inviting people around the world to join actor William Shatner by submitting their names online to be stored on a microchip that will travel aboard our historic Parker Solar Probe mission.
The first ever spacecraft to the sun.
To learn more and add your name to the mission, check out go.nasa.gov/hot-ticket. Names can be submitted until April 27, 2018. Parker Solar Probe is targeted for launch in summer 2018 to travel through the brutal heat and radiation of the sun's atmosphere, making critical observations to help us better understand how stars work and improve forecasts of major space weather events affecting life on Earth, as well as satellites and astronauts in space. The crew module for the next test of our Orion spacecraft's launch abort system recently arrived at our Johnson Space Center in Houston. Targeted for April 2019, the test will help ensure the spacecraft can carry astronauts to safety during a launch emergency and is a critical safety milestone in our effort to send crewed missions to the moon and beyond. A test version of our Space Launch System rocket's intertank is one of 5 components that make up the rocket's 212-foot-tall core stage. It was shipped recently from Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans to our Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, for tests to ensure the rocket can withstand the more than 8 million pounds of thrust experienced during liftoff and spaceflight. Our ICESat-2 mission will use an instrument called the Advanced Topographic Laser Altimeter System, or ATLAS, to measure the height of Earth's surface, in particular the changing polar ice. The instrument precisely times how long it takes light particles to bounce off Earth and return to the satellite. ICESat-2 is slated to launch in September from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. That's what's up this week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, follow us on the web at nasa.gov/twan.
So just briefly, before we hit the next video, because I know that we're kind of running low on time, some of you are asking already, how do we do this? How do we sign up to it? Well, I will put out a link for you guys. If you message me personally, which you can do either on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, anything, or email, I will send it out to you directly. Or if you're on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is that you're on and I'm on there, I will send it out directly to you as well. So yeah, I would like to show you this last particular video before I give you something special. You may have seen this one, but we'll keep it for now. Right, so the next video is called New Crew Arrives at the Space Station on This Week at NASA. Check this one out.
A new crew at the space station, some science on the next SpaceX resupply mission, and testing Orion's parachutes. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA.
Steady as she goes, the Soyuz spacecraft continuing its fly around of the International Space Station.
Our astronauts Drew Feustel and Ricky Arnold and Russia's Oleg Artemyev arrived safely at the International Space Station on March 23rd after a successful launch 2 days earlier from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Expedition 55-56 crew will work on hundreds of experiments during their 5-month stay on the orbiting microgravity laboratory. The next SpaceX resupply mission to the space station is set to launch April 2nd from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. Included in the 5,800 pounds of crew supplies, hardware, and research is an Earth observatory that will study severe thunderstorms and their role in Earth's atmosphere and climate, an investigation on bone marrow that could benefit future space explorers as well as humans on Earth, and a study on the production of high-performance products from metal powders, which could lead to improved manufacturing techniques. NASA successfully tested the Orion spacecraft's parachute system on March 16th at the U.S. Army Proving Ground in Yuma, Arizona. It was the first time engineers intentionally failed one of the system's 3 forward bay cover parachutes. The forward bay cover protects the upper part of Orion throughout its mission, but must be jettisoned during landing so the rest of Orion's parachutes can deploy. A team of engineers at our Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, have developed and tested a new 3D printing technique that can greatly reduce the cost and time needed to make rocket engine nozzles. This new technology could reduce manufacturing time from several months to several weeks, and is now being licensed and considered in commercial applications across the industry. Spacecraft AR is a new mobile app produced by our Jet Propulsion Laboratory in collaboration with Google that uses the latest augmented reality technology to put virtual 3D models of NASA's robotic spacecraft into any environment with a flat surface. The initial version of the app is available for Android devices, with plans to add other devices in the future. That's what's up this week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, follow us on the web at nasa.gov/twan.
Okay, so I'm going to throw the link out to you guys anyway. So if you guys got the pen and paper ready, which I'm hoping you do, or your phone, whatever it is you've got ready, the link to actually put your name into the probe that goes around the sun, if you type in go.nasa.gov/hot ticket, I will put this in afterwards for you guys. This will actually get you up to the page where you can sign up and you can do it. It is absolutely free. Do it while you can. You've got 1 month or just under that, thereabouts. Do it. I'm going to do it. My co-presenter is going to do it. Everyone else is probably going to do it. So anyway, moving on to the last video before I hit goodnight to you. I thought I'd put something very special out, considering it was a tribute show for Stephen Hawking. So this one, you probably may have seen it, I don't know, but we're going to go with it anyway. This one is called The Theory of Everything. It's a film. Who knows? Check this one out. I'll see you after.
Come on, get up. Morning, Brian. Stephen, are you aware that you voluntarily embarked upon a PhD in physics?
Hello.
Hello.
Science.
Art.
I'm a cosmologist.
What's that?
I study the marriage of space and time.
The perfect couple.
One never knows from where the next great leap forward is going to come, or from whom.
What if I reverse time to see what happened at the beginning of time itself?
Wind back the clock.
Wind back the clock?
Keep going.
I don't know how.
Yet.
Keep winding!
Where to?
It's called motor neuron disease. Life expectancy is 2 years.
I want us to be together for as long as we've got.
It'll affect everything.
You don't realize what lies ahead. This is going to be a very heavy defeat.
But I love him. And he loves me. We're going to fight this illness together. Good luck.
Why? I'm okay.
So, this black hole at the beginning of time. Brilliant. Brilliant, Stephen. Well done, Doctor.
He has pneumonia. The only way he will survive will be to give him a tracheotomy. He will never speak again.
Yes, he will.
My name is Stephen Hawking.
It's American.
Is that a problem?
It has been a great joy to watch this man defy every expectation, both scientific and personal.
There should be no boundary to human endeavor. However bad life may seem, while there is life, there is hope.
Thank you.
Sorry, did you say something?
I said, thank you.
So guys, just before I go, and if you're watching, you didn't quite get that pen and paper ready, don't worry, the link's coming right about now. It should be above the screen whenever you're ready. Yeah, so if you follow this link underneath, write it down. I'll keep it up there for at the end of the show until the credits come. Yeah, just go on that. You've got a few weeks left, probably 3 or so weeks. Do it. It's going to be awesome. We did a previous one for Mars, I believe, for the Mars rover. They're sending that out, I believe, next year. So yeah, pretty awesome. Guys, because it's coming up to the top of the hour with this time, I'm going to say goodnight, but if you want to have your music request out, you know what to do. Send an email to me at euu@tropicalfm.com. I will see you guys next week. Please send me any details on anything that you want me to cover for the show next week, because I'm going to be waiting for you. Yeah. Have a good night. Stay safe. Thank you for watching. Have a good week. Bye.
Tropical FM TV. Music for your soul.